Hi, everybody. Welcome to History of Rock and Roll, Week 6. And this week we're going to talk more about the British invasion. And then I want you to participate in a discussion question where you'll compare the influence of the Beatles to the Beach Boys, their American counterpart, and share your thoughts. For full credit, I also want you to respond to the thoughts of another student. Let's start by talking a little bit about the early days of the Beatles. They came together in 1957 as a skiffle band. Now, you probably don't know what a skiffle band is, but I want you to think about American folk music because skiffle bands used acoustic instruments and oftentimes played folk music. If you want to see a good example of this, go onto YouTube and look up the song My Bonnie, played by the Beatles. They actually recorded this when they were doing their stint of playing clubs in Hamburg, Germany, and they performed the song with a singer named Tony Sheridan, who sounds just like Elvis. Now, you may know My Bonnie. It's a folk song. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. It's a folk song that came over from the British Isles to America. And so they take this song and they start out with it like a folk song. And then about midway through, they start rocking out on it. So it's a perfect example of their early years as a skiffle band. As they came along, of course, they got more and more electrified and played more and more hardcore rock and roll. But 57 is when they got together. Lennon and McCartney were just in their mid-teens at that time. They pulled their friend George Harrison into the group. They had a different drummer at first, but once they came back from Hamburg, Germany, they linked up with Ringo Starr, who became their drummer for the rest of the band's career. And they also attracted the attention of a really great manager named Brian Epstein, who helped connect them with a terrific sound engineer named George Martin. Early names of the group were Johnny and the Moondogs, that's hilarious, and the Silver Beatles. They later modified that to just the Beatles with the spelling change, Beatles. But you can see how pronounced Buddy Holly's influence was on them because they kind of coined the term the Silver Beatles after Buddy Holly and the Crickets. Also, they were influenced, of course, by Chuck Berry. And you can hear that in their driving guitar licks that they have in some of their early songs. And we also mentioned Elvis. He was a great influence as well. I'm going to play a song for you that drew them to international attention in 1964. They made their way over to the US and were on the Ed Sullivan Show, which is a comedy variety show, and they played the song I Want to Hold Your Hands. And as you listen to I Want to Hold Your Hand, I want you to think about the influences that you hear from some of the early American rock stars that they listened to. Oh yeah, tell you something, I think you'll understand when I say that something. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. Oh please. All right, you can already hear a lot. You can hear the driving guitar licks that are borrowed from Chuck Berry. You can hear the beautiful harmonies that were inspired by groups like the Everly Brothers and maybe also the Beach Boys. You can hear that the hand claps in the background that were something that girl groups of the early 60s did. If you have a chance, listen to the song My Boyfriend's Back and There's Gonna Be Trouble, because they do those hand claps in that song. In the mid-60s, this was a time when the Beatles were moving from being craftsmen to true artists. And there were a number of songs that you could see this happening in. The song In My Life from the album Rubber Soul was their first mature song. And in this song, the Beatles kind of talk about the places and the people they've met in their lives some good, some bad, and they end by saying, "In my life, I love them all." Let me play just a little bit of it for you.
There are places I remember all my life, though some have changed, some forever, not for better. Some have gone, and some remain. All these places had their moments with lovers and friends. I still can recall. Some are dead and some are living. In my life, I've loved them all.
I'm going to stop right there. That was their first mature song. It's kind of funny to think about them being only like in their early 20s and taking a retrospective of their lives like they're very mature men. But this was part of their transformation from craftsmen to artists, from pop singers to musical innovators, really. The next song I want to talk about is a song that's outlined in your book. It's from the album Revolver in 1966, and the song is Tomorrow Never Knows. The interesting thing about this song is that they drew the lyrics from the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and they only use one chord in the song with a drone in the background. A drone is a folk instrument. It's a musical instrument that you would have heard played in the Middle Ages with great frequency, but not something that you'd expect in a pop song. So again, here they are being innovative. I'm going to play you a little clip where they talk about the making of this song. The first person to speak is George Martin, who was their wonderful producer, sound engineer.
And it was on Revolver that, of course, we have the track Tomorrow Never Knows, which was a great innovation.
That's me in my Tibetan Book of the Dead period. And the expression Tomorrow Never Knows was another of Ringo's. So I gave it a throwaway title because I was a bit self-conscious about the lyrics of Tomorrow Never Knows. So I took one of Ringo's malapropisms, which was like Hard Day's Night, and sort of to take the edge off the heavy philosophical lyrics.
That was John Lennon speaking. Well, the next thing that happened with the Beatles in the mid-60s was the creation of their landmark album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, 1967. This album was so innovative that it inspired generations of musicians that came after them. It really was the landmark album of the 60s. It's good to note, though, that they were inspired by the Beach Boys album from 1966, Pet Sounds. The album Pet Sounds has a number of really beautiful songs on it. But the most beautiful one, I want you to be sure and listen to this outside of our time together, is called God Only Knows. A beautiful ballad. This is a song of which Paul McCartney said, "It's the most beautiful song I think I've ever heard. I wish I had written that song." So again, there was this cross-fertilization between the Beach Boys and the Beatles, and the Beach Boys inspired the Beatles to create this very innovative album in 1967. There's so much to talk about here, but I'm trying to give you the highlights today. If you look at the cover, you see that Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band features the band members in front in marching band costumes, and they're standing in front of a drum with the name of the band on it, and in front of that is a bunch of flowers that spell out the name Beatles. And there are all kinds of figures back here from not only popular culture, but history and politics. And it's their way of saying, hey, everyone is coming together globally behind us, and we want to be a part of global culture. There are a few really great songs on this album. The very first one is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and right from the beginning you see what they're after. The Beatles are after creating a thematic album, and they do it. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to play a little bit of that first cut, which is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, And you're going to hear that they start out with crowd noises as if they are this municipal concert band that is playing a concert for people live. Well, I think you could hear what I mean. They start it with crowd noises, and at the end, they bring the crowd back in, and they seamlessly transition from this song to the next throughout the album. There are no pauses, one song to the next. A true thematic album. The most remarkable song on the whole album is the last song, A Day in the Life. And it's so remarkable because not only do you hear John Lennon's kind of darker influence in the songwriting, but you also hear Paul McCartney's brighter, more optimistic side. And they do something really neat with the orchestra in the middle before Paul McCartney's part comes up. They play a chromatic scale that ends in a crunching chord. I'm going to play that transition for you right now.
Woke up, fell out of bed.
And you were just hearing Paul McCartney sing. I'm going to let you discover the rest of it on your own and participate in the discussion question. Good luck.